Hello, and welcome to Passing the Mic, a series of conversations that will explore the issues that matter most to school leaders, teachers, students, and parents. I'm Sashelle Harris. Telling stories is one of the most powerful ways we have to influence, teach, and inspire others. It gives us an opportunity to learn from another person's perspective, to shape, strengthen, and even challenge our values and opinions. In today's conversation, our very own Deirdra Reed sits down with educator and poet Dasan Ahanu and prominent photographer Richard Ducree to discuss the power of storytelling and how it can be used as a vehicle for change in both education and in our communities. We hope you enjoy this conversation. Deirdra, take it away.
Thanks, Sashelle. Again, my name is Deirdra Reed. I am a partner at TNTP supporting our policy and advocacy work. In 2018, TNTP launched our report, The Opportunity Myth. That report was unique as we intentionally took the time to connect with students about their educational experience in real classroom time. Since then, we have seen the power of the voices of students as they articulate their educational aspirations and their educational journey. This work has catapulted us into public conversations about the role of student voice and how the voice and experience of students should be a key driver as we reshape and reimagine education. As an organization, we have committed to playing a role in the understanding and to help convey the student experience, as well as the fact that we have decided that to really support educational change, it is critical to hear those most impacted, which are the students. For TNTP, this is not a transactional relationship. What we have found is that as important as it is for us to hear from students and families, it is equally important for students to be heard. There was something powerful in the ability of people to name and own their own experience in ways that inspire them to take action. So this spring, TNTP is launching the I Am the Dream Storytelling Project. This project is designated and designed to offer a safe space for young people and community members to articulate their current educational experiences, their hopes, their dreams for themselves, and the way in which they want to see education support them throughout their journey. Because we believe in the power of story and the untapped potential of all students, we wanted to launch this project this spring in ways that honor the storyteller. Many times storytellers live at the intersection of their voice, their story, and the arts. I personally remember the first time I read Langston Hughes' I Too Am America. It was both his story and my story in the form of a poem. Or how I felt a few years ago when hip hop artist Kendrick Lamar wrote the summer anthem that talked about what was happening in communities all across this country, but summed up the experience in affirmation that we gonna be all right. Both unique expressions of what happens in life and community. We want to provide a space for young people to unpack all that is going on in the world around them and their educational journey in productive and affirming ways. So this project will start by gathering students who have an appreciation for the art of storytelling to help them both find their voice and support their expression through written word, spoken word, and visual arts. We have a small cadre of artists that are supporting this project and who will help guide young people as they lift their experience and begin to find ways to express them. Today, I have with me two dynamic men who are helping to shape the virtual launch of this project. Dasan Ahanu, an educator and artist activist from Durham, North Carolina, and Richard Ducree, a former educator and photojournalist hailing from Atlanta, Georgia. Greetings all. As we get started, We want to not only talk about the project, but showcase the potential of the project. So let's start off with a piece from artist Eternal that was created from a prompt. Tell us about your educational journey.
Three bound. You act like this is a surefire plan. The world is changing, but you stay trying to piss on my head and say it's raining. The plan that's established for education is tainted when we hit the workforce and we still struggle to make it. All the time we wasting cause the lessons that we teaching the kids are not engaging, and the teachers love the students but pay grade they hate it. So a concentrated effort to make the class a challenge, no incentive to make it. And everybody plays a part in this. Nobody's innocent. Consistent budget cuts in public schools, I witnessed it. Parents treating this like a daycare is ridiculous. The disbelief in our children's future, the antithesis. If we say we care, and let's make it clear, giving the tools to learn in these formative years, giving the truth to fortify they hustle out here so they don't believe the lies and opportunity miss.
One of the amazing things about that piece from Eternal is that it was produced by an amazing, amazing producer, Mike Sampson. Eternal and Mike are going to be a part of this project. They've been a part of the team helping organize and put the project together, as well as they will be a part of helping to facilitate for our virtual event. So this is a perfect example of what it means to create this opportunity and have these artists come together to offer their gift to what we're trying to do.
This project is about students finding their voice, especially at the intersection of education, their experiences, and activism and arts. Can we start by just you all introducing yourself and telling us about how you found your voice? And let's get started with Dasan.
Yeah, my name is Dasan Ahanu, and yeah, it's interesting because for me, I found my voice initially in the home. You know, I had a family that really fed my curiosity and gave me a little bit of room to kind of question, and that really helped me out a lot. Gave me things to read, kind of just kept me active. I found my poetic voice initially in school. Second grade was the first time someone actually encouraged my poetry writing. I got a poem in the school newspaper, but I came to understand what my voice could do in community, and found a really amazing community of artists and socially minded and culturally minded folks in my city, coming home from college. And that really helped me understand what my voice could do and how I could shape it and cultivate it.
Thank you. And I know that you're also an educator, so I wanted to give a little bit of space for you to talk about how has that been as an experience of helping other young people find their voice?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always important to try to create that kind of capacity. So and help other folks understand it. You know, that balance of school and community, I think, and family and household, all three of them come together to shape someone. And so helping them understand how you can find your voice in the midst of that is important. And for me, like even the piece that we have from Eternal is one of those young artists that I met and got a chance to mentor and teach. And he's also an educator. So when you can help someone kind of cultivate that, they then turn around and do that for the next generation.
I totally appreciate that. Richard, tell us about how you found your voice.
Initially found my voice through my parents. My mother is an educator, also active in the civil rights movement. My father is a minister, and always, learning about social justice, especially during the civil rights movement. And later at the Schomburg in New York City, under the tutelage of Deborah Willis, looking at old archives of people like Gordon Parks, Vanderzee, and being inspired by them. Also attending art school in Manhattan, High School of Art and Design, where my visual arts was always something that was always pushed to me as a young person. And later in life, being active on a college university as the first Black photo editor at a predominantly white school at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And then later, studying and going on to architecture, and then still finding that void of still needing to be active. I picked up my camera again and really got involved with the different social justice issues that are going on. I really define myself as a cultural documentarian who's specialized in the African diaspora, just kind of constantly this evolving evolution of social justice in America and revisiting the same issues like Ferguson, like what's just happened this past summer with Black Lives Matter. So that's what pushes me and actually inspiring young people to get involved in finding their voice.
Thank you. And again, welcome you all. I mean, when we started to envision like what this project could potentially be, it really, for me, it is centered in, the role that young people play both in storytelling and telling like what's happening in their world in real time, like how they're, just translating the world through their, through their eyes, but then also the role that young people have played traditionally in this country as it relates to pushing and disrupting systems and structures that they think are unfair. And so I think it's just so apropos that we're starting this project right around like the MLK holiday. Like I am also a lover of like the civil rights movement. And so when we think of Martin Luther King Jr., most people think of his famous speech, "I have a dream." I love the fact that the Latinx community also proclaimed, as they started to start the immigration reform movement, they proclaim their children as dreamers. And so this idea that young people are the embodiment of, everything beautiful that this country and this world could be, really inspired us to call this project the I Am the Dream Project, so that we could really center the experience of students in ways that are affirming for them. And so I wanted to just, put that out there. It's like, why did they decide, like, especially as it relates to TNTP, the report was called the opportunity myth, right? And it was like, how do we upend or how do we dismantle this idea of the opportunity myth? And we're, we want to say, we want to really live into the aspiration of that and say, we do that by making sure that young people can access their dreams. And so to that end, I wanted to just talk to y'all a little bit about like, what does it mean at the intersection of art, activism, and the voice of young people? Like, why is this important to you all? And how do you envision this project helping to highlight the voice of the dreamer?
I guess for me, it's, I think children, young people will express themselves in different ways. And the most important aspect of it, I think, is how do you find your voice with certain media? Some are able to do it through writing, others are able to do it through art, as well as other mediums of doing it. But I think that the opportunity of merging both at the intersection of technology and these are ways of young people expressing themselves of what's going on in current issues that are happening today. And to say, hey, I have a voice too. And I think that with the different devices that are out today, that there's a great opportunity for them to express, more so than my generation, where it was pretty much hip hop and doing a mixtape and maybe doing some graffiti on the wall. Though I don't encourage doing the graffiti on the wall. We used to do tag books, but and Dasan, you know about tag books, right? The little black books that we had back in the day. And the idea behind that is, how do you express yourself in these white pages? and we would pass that book over to someone else, and they would spend maybe a couple of days of doing their tags and graffiti. And that was my day of doing it. Now with mass media, with Instagram, TikTok, how do we hone in and make that a creative platform that is about expressing yourself? But I think at the same time, how do you get your message out in a creative way? I mean, that's always the evolving thing that's happening. Each generation has their moment, right? And nowadays, the young people have a different media that I'm still learning, right, to do it. And I think that there's always that combination of past and present, and helping guide them in whether or not you create constraints or you don't create constraints. Sometimes you can find creating boundaries or working on a certain format that your message is a lot stronger. And I don't mean constraints in the sense of holding them down, but limiting the medium that they use to try to express within that boundary.
Yeah, I mean, that's, that's one of the things that I think has always been important for me, is, how we hold space for being able to kind of just uncover and define that voice. For me, I believe everybody's voice is there. We have to kind of sift through all the noise. The perceptions, expectations, all the things that kind of get in the way and make us believe our voice is supposed to look like something else other than what it is, but it's there. We can cut through all of that person's voice shines. So then how do we hold spaces? And for me, I'm a writer and performer, and, what I benefited from was having community-minded folks as well as particular teachers throughout my journey who held space in a particular way, and then kind of grounded me in this larger, understood the personal, but grounded me in this sense of place and space and community, so that kind of informed, but also kind of led me into coming into my voice. And so, for me, I spent a lot of time at the public school and at the college level working with institutions and community organizations and teachers and school systems, just helping to create those same kind of spaces. Because if you can create the right space, then exactly what Richard's talking about, they can start to figure out what medium speaks to them. And then they can start to kind of start to really move and create with that medium. I think Richard brings up another good point, is that in a lot of times that creative energy is going to those mediums before they're given vocabulary and language around what it is they're actually doing. So then also creating space for them, for their voice in the educational process, to be able to match what we want them to learn with what they're already doing, so that we can give that language, so that empowers them to be able to talk about it in a different way as creators and as makers. So I think that those things are really powerful.
Right, and there's a point of self-discovery. Self-discovery is the end goal of learning what your voice is and how do you use that voice. And Brother Man,
and not mimicking the voice of others. To me, that's the thing that is super interesting and for me about what this space has the potential to do. So when I think about finding your voice, first you sometimes mimic other people's voice. You know what I mean? I can even see it when I think about hip hop or whatever. It's oh, I love the cadence of this person. They used to call it satelliting. I don't know if they still call it that or not. But you'd hear the cadence of somebody else's voice, and then you'd kind of mimic what they were saying. But you need that space to say but is that what you really meant? Is that what you really meant to say? And so really just giving the opportunity for young people to just have some freedom within boundaries. I'll say that, some freedom within boundaries. So yes, so thank y'all. I also think at the intersection of finding your voice, and the artistic expression, I'm not going to say that it's baked in the cake, but it's really, there's a real opportunity for activism. And I feel like right at this potential, at this particular moment in history, there is a way that young people are showing up, whether it's through the movement for Black Lives or the way they're just, even whether they're showing up there or no, that they are grappling with like, what is this world that I've been given? And is this the world that do I believe in the world that I'm living in? And in what ways do I want to see it changed? And what is my role in changing it? And so again, we're older, I guess. And so when I think about, James Baldwin or Zora Neale Hurston, or, just like the way in which there was creative content that was created, but it also mirrored the times and was really put up a mirror for, others to look at the world as it is, and then to have some space, both as the artist who created it, but then also as the person who's consuming the art, to be able to really grapple with like what's going on, Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. And so I wanted to just see that as like potential for this. And let's talk about how this project could matter for the budding artist and like the student who's, I imagine, I know we're in a virtual and hybrid situation now with the pandemic, but I just imagine folks who are watching this remember a young person that was either, beating on a table at school or scribbling on a piece of paper. And when you looked at it, it was really them, trying to express themselves through like beats, art, or like through their words. And so what could this mean for the budding artist?
Going back to your point about mentioning some of the greats, every generation has its moment, right? And sometimes it's forced upon you, and due to the climate that you live in, a lot of times people find their voices, and all the people you mentioned, from Zora Neale Hurston and as well as James Baldwin, they found their voice. Langston Hughes found their voice. So as a vehicle, I think this is a great opportunity, once again, with technology, in the type of climate that we are with the pandemic, is to find they have even more tools with social media, and that this is a great opportunity for them to find their own voice in a creative way.
Yeah, I mean, there's everything has there's a process to everything, but there's also a need to cultivate it. And so I think any opportunity that we can get to be able to feed that awareness, or feed that critical inquiry, and feed that analysis of what's going on around you, what comes out in the other end is a deeper piece. I mean, I think when you talk about Zora Neale Hurston and James Baldwin, I think when there's a group of folks who can provide young folks with that understanding, that you can get the piece, that kind of set the country on fire, that when we saw a different perspective from Little Baby. Right. When you see those kind of things, like that whole Chicago movement with Chance and Mick Jenkins and that came out of Young Chicago Authors, which is a hip hop and spoken word youth program that does stuff across Chicago. Like, you can kind of feed this, the young leaders of the BLM movement, those powerful women of color, were able to hold that space in a real critical way. Like, we can, if you give folks that space and give them that mentorship and guidance, but give them room to be themselves, then we can start to see that. And I think that's something, and then we have to listen to what they create. Right. And we can provide a context, but we can't dismiss it or devalue it, or we can't get caught in some of the traps of generationalism or ageism, and just kind of let their voices be front and center. One of the things that I really find interesting is one of the young artists that is involved in this project. We asked him about his thoughts around his artistry and art in general, and the power that it has to make change. And I think he has something really powerful to say.
One other point, you mentioned there was also, back in the 60s, there was the Afro-Koba movement. a visual African artist out of Chicago that was responding to social issues. So, this could be the same type of platform, is that you have a collaborative of young people coming together, both visually as well as with lyrics, just coming together and merging this. This is nothing new. This is in our DNA, and it is just is going back to Dasan was saying, is basically cultivating that and documenting it, and that we on the verge of really doing something great with young people, and there's opportunity is endless of what we can do.
So how about, Deirdra, how about we check out Hassan Bird, a powerful activist, young activist and poet, and hear some of his thoughts about art and community.
I think art can be a tool for change because it helps people see a different perspective. It helps people gain confidence and learn to trust their voice and share their voice and listen to other people's voice. It helps to communicate feelings that can't be described through normal conversation, or might be a little strained to describe through normal conversation. So it sort of expedites communication in a way, and it allows people to connect with perspectives and people that they wouldn't normally connect with or reach out to understand. So it creates mutual understanding amongst uncommon people or uncommon places. So I just think art is a great way for people who wouldn't normally connect to connect, and find a common ground that maybe regular life wouldn't necessarily allow or offer them the space to do.
That was an amazing representation. So thank you so much, Dasan, for bringing that to our space. Well, we want to start to kick off this I Am the Dream project with a virtual space that highlights artists and gives young people an opportunity to be motivated and inspired by what is possible through this project. We're calling this space the Haps. And so I want to give Dasan a little bit of time to talk us through. Dasan, what is the Haps, and who is this project? How will we be kicking this off?
So the Haps is interesting. The Haps is both a meeting, a showcase, a maker space, a gathering, a celebration. It is all those things in one. It is a place for artists, and we definitely want to make sure to say that this is a place that is centering artists, but also for activists and educators to all come together. It is a place for us to share our thoughts and ideas. What it's going to be is going to be a space where we can kind of, hear more about the issues and more about the opportunity myth, more about some of the challenges that we're trying to tackle in terms of our educational system. But we can also have space for artists to be able to gather collectively and talk craft and talk, best practices, and to share their art with each other, whether it's an open mic, whether it's a cipher, in a place even for beat makers to be able to highlight and showcase what they're making, and be able to talk, tools, devices, approaches, and also a town hall space that can broaden the conversation and think about other ways of storytelling and what that was. And it is that kind of space. We're excited to be able to do this in a way by doing it virtually, where we can have folks from all over the country come and participate. So we can kind of get across some of those geographical borders that sometimes kind of prohibit us, and some of the other barriers, because we are real folks out here living real lives, that might prevent us from being able to gather in a space physically. We can do this virtually and really have some fun, and we're gonna party because joy is really, really important, and it's necessary to maintain. So a live DJ, and we're just gonna have a lot of fun. But it is an artistic and creative space for being able to delve into some real critical issues.
Thank you. And I love the fact that you said that there's going to be beat makers there as well. So like every form of artistry is going to be welcome in this space. I want to really be very transparent because you all are African American men. I'm an African American woman, and so this could seem like this space is only like it's a in the space of movement for Black lives, that this is only a Black space. But like, can you tell us about like who's welcome to come into this space, and like how are we how are you envisioning participation?
It is an open space. It is in the true sense of community. Folks who feel like that they can, that they're interested in being in the space and are invited to come up and show up authentically as who they are. If they are open-hearted, open-minded, then this is the space for them to be in. I think it's better when we can all gather and together and be able to really dive into these things. So it is definitely an open space. It is a space that understands the plight and struggles of those who have been oppressed and marginalized, and that is a part of what we're holding. Whether you are Black, are Indigenous, are Latina, Latinx, like those, whether it's orientation, whether it's identity, but it is an inclusive space, and that's important to note, because when we talk about culture and art, that has historically been a gathering spot across differences in order to be able to hear and share and kind of grow and celebrate each other.
Yes, and I love that, like Hasan really spoke to that, of saying, like, if nothing else brings us together, art and artistry brings us together. And so love the idea that this is a space for those who have been othered or oppressed, or, like, even when I think about the opportunity myth, one of the points of the opportunity myth was that there was a real racialized lens to how we could see education disparities and inequities. And so, yeah, come one, come all, right, into this space and be able to talk about your educational experience and be supported in real ways. So loving that. I also want to, and intergenerational space, exactly. So it's not just for young people. We're hoping that, again, as we think about TNTP and who we serve, we know we serve a lot of teachers and teachers of different ethnicities. So we're welcoming teachers into the space. We're welcoming young people into the space so that we can learn from each other. So thank you so much for that. The other thing that I love about this idea of holding this virtual space called the Haps is that you talked about these liberation lounges, or these, like, I love the fact that they're not breakout rooms on Zoom, but they're actually liberation lounges. And so can you tell us about the liberation lounges, how they'll operate, and like what you expect out of them?
Yeah, so I mean, when you name something the Haps, then that already sets a particular standard. And when we talk about the Haps, what we're talking about is what's happening, where it's happening, and why it's happening, and that's the Haps. And so if that's the case, then we need to create and hold unique spaces within it. And so we decided to have liberation lounges because we believe that through art, and community is where you can find your way to liberation. That's where you can develop strategy, you can organize, you can envision, you can plan, you can mobilize, you can educate and learn. And so we're going to have liberation lounges, and each liberation lounge is going to be dedicated to holding a particular kind of sharing and creative space. We're going to have a space for writers and poets, and an open mic within that. We're going to have a space for lyricists and MCs and rappers to be able to share and kind of build a cipher. We're going to have a space for beat makers to talk. And then we're going to hold this space for being able to dive a little bit deeper into the issues and figure out ways to be able to kind of to raise awareness and understanding, but also other ways to think about how we can impact this educational system and challenge some of the inequities. So these liberation lounges are going to be important, and they're lounges because these are informal gathering spaces that allow people to come in and know that they can kind of exhale and kind of just relax and be who they are. There's nobody watching that we need to be weary of. It's just us, it's just us. So that's the important part, that everybody feels that when they come into the space, you're being welcomed into a comfortable and welcoming space.
Thank you for that. I love that. So how will this, there's a piece of this which is about your personal growth and development as individuals, but I think that the theme throughout, this conversation has been not about only your own lived experience, but like, how are we creating community, right? And so to that end, how is this project gonna, how is the Haps gonna culminate? How do we, what will this community create? Or is this all just about your personal growth and development?
Well, one of the things I hold to is, the idea that radical transformation is redemptive and revolutionary, which means that it's both individual and collective. So, changing, having an impact on an individual, and then that individual being able to be in community with others means that you not only change, they only change, but the community is changed. And so that means that we gotta not only provide, opportunities for the folks who attend, but also provide opportunities for them to continue to build with each other. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna offer, opportunities through the I Am the Dream Storytelling Project for the artists to be able to tell their stories. And not only tell their stories, but tell the stories of their communities. And so that's going to be one way. We're going to put artists together. When we've got beat makers and we've got poets and lyricists, then we're going to hold a space for them to be able to get together and to be able to have an opportunity to create together and collaborate and see if we can support and encourage some collaboration in what comes out of that. Because as you always say, the movement needs a soundtrack. We're also going to provide an opportunity for artists and participants to be able to sign up and register for some workshops, but you're going to take a deeper dive into arts and activism. And through that, to envision some other kinds of pieces that can be created that will be a part of the storytelling project. And so this is an opportunity not only to kind of build and connect and share with each other, but it's an opportunity for there to be some commissioned work that comes out of it for these artists, and an opportunity to stay connected not only to each other, but also to the issue and to the work that's being done. And that's important, especially during these times, that artists are being supported, that there's opportunity for them to be commissioned and receive, get a little something in their pockets, and an opportunity to be able to spread their message through the art.
Love it, love it, love it. Yes, so I feel like this is going to be such a unique opportunity for, not just young people. I hear you keep pushing me to say this is an intergenerational space, but I really do want the folks who are watching this to come away thinking about, like, there's somebody they have, like, as soon as they started hearing this, they start thinking about that one young woman, or that, you know what I mean? Like that one young man that they're like, you know what, I'm not reaching them this way, but maybe this is a way for them to find themselves and really to get up under, like, what are they experiencing? And so I'm just excited and just honestly really humbled to be working with you all as we start to, just hold space for young people and folks to start to find their voice. And so thank you so much for helping to lead this work. Dasan is helping us to lead this, to lead the Haps, as well as the workshops, the artists and activist workshops that will happen once we get on the other side of this first, virtual kickoff. Richard.
Yes.
Like Dasan said, my favorite thing to say is every movement or every generation has their own soundtrack. But you challenge me all the time to say it's not just a soundtrack, but that there's also a legacy of photography and of capturing of stories through photography that is also really important in the way in which we actually see the world. So like you said, Gordon Parks, or you know what I mean? Like just like how we see the world. So tell me about like how you're envisioning this work, and give us an insight on, you talked a little bit about your story, but I just feel like the listeners and viewers of this could really appreciate, your journey into photojournalism and photo activism, and how you've been able to show your voice.
I like the phrase "I am hip hop," so I grew up in that era, and for every the camera's always been there. Art has always been a part of hip hop, and the culture, documenting the different styles, documenting the movement, and of course, Hip hop reflects everyday lives, whether good or bad, and art does the same thing. Photography, and my journey was that, basically capturing particularly the African diaspora of how we, um, how we are loving people and how we are continuing the struggle of fighting. Um, Fighting for our rights. This is nothing new. It's just something that we always have done. And my journey, like I said before, it starts with my parents, particularly my mother being involved in the civil rights movement and looking at Gordon Parks, looking at DeCarver, looking at various different um, photographers, particularly even artists. Nelson Stevens was one of my mentors who was part of Afrocoba when I was at the University of Massachusetts, and hearing him, how he captured the African American experience. So those are the things that I have my foundation in: studying art, studying photography, and then finding my own voice as situations were happening, as it became real time. This past summer, documenting during the pandemic how even in the midst of a pandemic, Black people wanted to be heard, and right along those socially conscious white people were right there next to them of all colors, wanting to express themselves on how the injustices of George Floyd, Arbery, and Taylor, all these injustices were happening real time in the middle of a pandemic. Didn't care, but they needed a voice about the pandemic. They needed to get their voice out, and I was in the midst of all that, capturing that. And how do I see young people along? I think there's some synergies between this cipher of lyrics in this cipher of doing a photo battle. It kind of a call and response which is deeply tradition within the African American experience. It is something that is in all of us. And if you're American, the call and response, whether or not you're white, Hispanic, is in you too, because we are America. In some cases, we our foundation is interwoven into this quilt of what defines America. And and the thing about it is, African American culture is American history. So if you're white, this is part of your culture as well. It's not just honed on to just one group of people, but we are the ones that are expressing that that's always been hidden in the history books. And what I see young people is basically capturing what they see in visually. And sometimes some things cannot be expressed in words, but it can be done through artwork. It can be done through photography.
This is such a good, not in going back to our initial conversation, but like when I think about all of those different, like, where are we right now? So Gil Scott Heron said the revolution will not be televised. And, I feel like we've got to make an amend to that. It's like, it won't be televised, but it will, be captured on Instagram, right, and on Twitter and on TikTok. It's like the way in which young people are showing up and, using their literal camera phones to capture their lived experience. Again, to Dasan's point, it's like, how do we help to nurture that, what they're capturing, and helping them to translate that both for themselves internally, but then also externally for the world. And so,
Dasan said something very clearly: is how do you filter out the noise? And I think as educators, we don't want to censor so much, but we want to help guide young people to filter out what is some of that noise. What are you saying? And that goes back to my point about, sometimes you do have to set up some constraints, within working with various different mediums of it, because that will force you to concentrate and filter out the noise. And developing those platforms with And that's what we do as educators. That's our history of studying what has been in the past and trying to guide young people, not to necessarily to control their voice, but to help them to focus the noise.
Yes, I agree. I also think that what has been so beautiful, and I know that hopefully we're going to be able to show some of your, like we'll be showing parts of your work, is that you have this unique ability to take even what could seem like the most dire circumstances, and you show them in such a beautiful way. So like this idea of like, poverty as being a deficit versus, resilience, or, love or joy in the midst of even spaces that, folks may traditionally think is being not that. And so that is what I am really excited about, you being able to help to support young people, in their quest of like visually representing their world. It's like, show me your world through the beautiful, loving lens that you actually see it, and not from the lens that someone else has told you about.
You have to humanize and not treat things as subjects or people as subjects. That's one thing I always teach, is that you have to humanize and feel what they feel. Though sometimes, sometimes it's hard to take those pictures, but you have to be respectful. And I think that, and you have to come from, and I think that's what, if you look at Gordon Parks' work, he humanizes every situation of poverty. He humanizes injustices in the sense of how the people that dealt with Jim Crow and what they really were experiencing. And those images were very powerful because in some cases he was televising the revolution, so other people can see what's going on in the world. And I think that's every job of a photographer, is there's a time to shoot and a time not to shoot. But if you definitely want to, you have to find that voice. And that was my voice.
Yeah. And so I thank you for, and I mean, I'm looking over at Dasan at this moment, because I feel like Richard Ducree is being very humble at this time because he has done so many amazing, like you've shot so many amazing just things out in the world, but then also people. Like you've shot Barack Obama, you've taken photography for Senator-elect Warnock in Georgia, like you've done the Edmund Pettus Bridge march. There are so many like really historical moments from hip hop, like the rise of hip hop, all the way to the presence of like Ferguson on into like what's happening over the summer. Like you've been there with your camera with this humanizing lens. And so what we really want to be able to bring to bear in this project is the wisdom that you bring to photography, as we're starting to help young people who are interested in photography, or people who are interested in photography, in being able to do the same. And so I just thank you personally for your work, and both of you collectively for the way in which you your approach into at the intersection of arts, activism, and community building. And so to that end, I know that we need to transition at this point into how people get involved. And so Dasan, can you set up for us our last artist, activist, and then let's talk about how people can get involved.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we hope happens, and I believe is going to happen, is just the impact that it has on what these artists create going forward. Much like in many of the other moments that inspire an artist to create. And so with that, we have an amazing young artist named James, who takes a look back at his educational experiences. And I think that it speaks to so much of what this kickback and what we're trying to do is about. So let's hear from James.
My name is James Wigginton. I'm from Manassas Park, Virginia. I did not really realize until I got to A&T how much of an uphill battle that I had to face with the education system. So hopefully through art and different things of that nature, and you know, what this young brother is doing right here, hopefully that we can make it so that we don't have to fight such an uphill battle for those that come after us. Me and my art teacher never really came to an understanding. I do the work, make my brush stroke with similarity, make my hands mold to the matrix. I thought my ceiling was the Sistine Chapel, but I was held back by the fact that my color never really fit inside of her lines. I remember as vivid as pastel collisions, pulling up my canvas to see my teachers commented, painted boldly, "You failed. I don't think art is for you." Walking down the long hallways into the cafeteria, then going to our 20 minutes of recess till it was back to our room, her comments still weighed heavy on my mind. The sign up from the art expo was still on my back, mocking me, screaming that I didn't even deserve a name, just the numbers. They say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but here I was blinded by the ugliness of them not appreciating my artistry. Blame it on my young mind. You see, nowadays I overanalyze and theorize, but back then I wasn't imprisoned by prisms yet. Maybe drawing freehand gave me a better grip on reality. Either way, by the time I made it back to science, every cell in my body knew the numbers weren't adding up. My interest was suddenly subtracted from math. My desire for an honor roll became history. School was a fraud, the epitome of the system itself, one that rounded up the black kids until we formed our own circle to protect ourselves. Hated on us because our minds weren't squares like theirs. No, we rather think outside of the box. We stroked brushes on canvases for grades, not knowing ignorant mind would never be able to see our greatness. Instead, their curriculum instructed our demise because they never gave a F about us. While they made us insecure about coloring in the lines that they monitored oh so close, they thought it was neat to see our colored skin close to flatlining on the monitor. And after we left the prisms that shaped our insecurities, we went down long hallways to a class to learn about a cell. Bells ringing before we even got there to make sure we was on time, bunked up in a table and overcrowded sharing necessities. We'd leave there to learn about unfavorable statistics and a history that saw us dying over and over and over and over, as if to repeat the notion that we had no future. And what pissed me off the most is that every morning I had to pledge allegiance to a nation that wanted to send me to prison before I came out my mother's womb. And I knew my experience wasn't the same as some of my peers. That while that they were being told to follow their dreams, I was being told to follow the leader. While they were being taught how to file taxes, my mother was taxed extra just so they could have my name on file. And while they were having doors open for opportunity, my teachers would slam them just to get us used to the sound of confinement. But then the end of the year came, and we flipped schedules. And despite her desperate attempts, my art teacher would have to come to grips with the fact that her negativity didn't shape me. My colored skin, which was lined up in her hatred, still found a way to break the mold. Painted a masterpiece on my canvas before she could paint my name on mass incarceration lists or the community obituaries. I make my artwork differently now. I count blessings. I'm mastering the science of overcoming depression despite my family history, but we won't flip the system. Because part of overcoming these obstacles is to make sure that the ones behind us don't have to. Thank you.
So when you take a look at that piece, you hear it. You hear about some of the frustrations, some of the challenges, and the impact that what a young person goes through, navigating some of the barriers and things they go through, getting through the educational system. That comes through in that piece. And so what we want to do is we want to create these kind of incubating environments for these artists. And so how you can get involved is this is an experience, this kickback is going to happen February 1st, in the evening of February 1st. And what we want people to do is we want people to register. There is a website that they can go to, the hapsforus.com. They can also go to the Eventbrite page and register, sign up. to be a part of this experience. We will send out information about how to prepare and, you know, what to submit for each of the Liberation Lounges. We will keep folks up to date about who's going to be facilitating these spaces and what else is going to be happening over the course of the evening. And we'll also be able to make sure that everyone truly understands how to best enjoy the experience and can spread the word and share it with others. So we want people to talk about it. We want them to send artists our way. We want the teachers to register and sign up. We want all the young folks to sign up. We just want everybody to go ahead, map it on their calendars, mark out the time, be prepared, bring their art, bring themselves, and let's all get together and have a really good time and be able to address and talk about some real critical issues. There are going to be some giveaways. Like we said earlier, there's going to be some opportunities to stay engaged after, ways for artists to be able to be supported in doing some additional work. We really want this to be a catalyst and a spark.
TNTP as we create this digital storytelling project, the I Am the Dream project. Again, we're going to kick off this project with a virtual, we're not calling it a conference. It is not a conference. It is called the Haps. We are kicking it off with the Haps, the happenings. So we ask that you register for that so that we can make sure that you are, you know, a part of the project. We also want to ensure that as we do move forward in this digital storytelling project, that you feel connected both to, you know, the folks who are going to be helping to support it, the artists that are supporting, but then also with each other. And so we ask you, as you are thinking about who should get involved, you know, whether it's a teacher or a student, or whether it's a whole classroom, you're like, hey, I have this creative writing class, and I think this would be a great virtual experience for them. Like, just reach out to us both through the website. You also can reach out to me, Deirdra Reed at TNTP.org. If there's like some, you know, request that we might need to, you know, navigate, if there's a question or a comment that we need to navigate, please feel free to reach out to me. But we look forward to being in relationship with you. We look forward to helping to start to build this online community with you, and we hope that that this spark that Dasan talks about and this community that we have been, you know, talking about over this last hour really just comes to fruition. So thank you in advance, and we look forward to seeing you at the Haps.
Thank you for joining us for Passing the Mic. We encourage you to keep the conversation going and for you to share your stories with us on social media using the hashtag #PassingTheMic_TNTP. We look forward to connecting with you during our next conversation. Until then, stay safe.